August 1957. Dillon, Montana, a ranch 22 miles east of town on Route 41, where the grass runs flat to the Beaverhead River and the cottonwoods go yellow earlier than anywhere else in the county. The bank has scheduled a land auction for 10 o'clock Friday morning. Here is the story. Clara Maudsley had worked that land for 31 years. Not 30, not some years. 31. She arrived in 1926 as the wife of Roy Maudsley. Roy had come from Nebraska with $400, a second-hand tractor, and the kind of stubbornness the high plains either reward or bury. They ran cattle. They put in hay fields in the river bottom. They raised 2 daughters, Margaret in 1928, Ruth in 1931, in a house Roy built himself from timber hauled from a mill outside Butte. 2 summers on that house. He built it to be permanent. The kitchen smelled like wood smoke and coffee Roy made strong enough to stand a spoon in. The front door had a screen that slapped twice when you let it go. Linoleum in the front hallway, worn pale at the threshold by 30 years of boots. The wooden counter buffed smooth by all those elbows. The hay barn had a window on the east wall that let in the first light every morning, low and pale gold, lying across the top rail of the stall. It moved slow while the ranch started its day. Roy died in the winter of 1952. Not a dramatic death. His heart stopped on a Tuesday afternoon in February while he was carrying a feed bucket to the barn. The temperature was 11 degrees. Clara found him when the cattle started calling. He was 57. He had not missed a single day of work in 26 years on that ground. She was 54 years old. She had $240 in the bank, 2 daughters in other states, and 480 acres of Montana ranch land she did not intend to surrender. Have you ever known someone who worked like this? Who picked up a thing that would have broken most people and simply decided not to be broken? This is for those people. Clara Maudsley ran that ranch for 5 more years. Alone, she hired a hand 2 seasons, a boy named Lester, who was good with fence and not much else, but for the most part she did the work herself. She kept 60 head. She put up hay every summer. She paid her property taxes in full, on time, every year, without exception and without asking anyone for help. What she did not pay, what she could not fully pay, was the loan she had refinanced in 1953 to get through the first winter after Roy died. The terms were explained by a man from the bank named Gerald Hooper. Pressed shirts, measured tone. The interest rate was adjustable. That detail, Clara would later say, was not made clear the way it should have been. By August of 1957, the outstanding balance was $4,200. Gerald Hooper arrived at the ranch on a Monday morning in a Buick that was too clean for a ranch road. He set a document on Clara's kitchen table. He told her the bank intended to sell the property to satisfy the debt. The auction was set for Friday. He was sorry, he said. He was genuinely sorry. The coffee pot was on the burner behind him, and neither of them touched it. Everybody in that kitchen knew what was happening. Where are you watching from? Drop your state in the comments. I want to see how far this story reaches. John Wayne had no business being in Dillon, Montana in August of 1957. He was between pictures, had finished The Wings of Eagles in the spring, months away from starting Legend of the Lost. He had come to Montana because a wrangler named Pete Calloway, who'd been on 2 productions with him, had a contact up near Wisdom with land for sale. Pete had asked Wayne before he died if he'd ever consider buying ground in Montana. Wayne had said he might. He drove himself. He preferred it that way when he could manage it. No crew, no studio people, no schedule to keep. He came through Dillon on Route 41 on Thursday afternoon, the day before the auction, and stopped at a filling station for gas. He wore a hat with the brim pulled low and in a town of 3,000 people in 1957, a man in a hat and boots at a filling station was just a man in a hat and boots. The attendant pumping the gas was a boy of about 17 who did not recognize him immediately, and by the time the tank was full, they had talked for 10 minutes about the auction without the boy knowing who he was talking to. Wayne listened. He asked 2 questions. He paid for his gas. He leaned against the front fender of his truck for a moment after, looking east toward the river where the cottonwoods were showing their first yellow. Then he drove that direction. He found the ranch house by the cottonwoods, the way the boy at the station described it. Clara Maudsley was in the yard when the truck pulled in, carrying a bucket toward the barn. She did not know who he was immediately. She would say this later, and people smiled at it. But she was 59 years old, and had spent most of that year with cattle, and what she saw was a large man in a hat getting out of a truck on her property the afternoon before a bank auction. She set the bucket down and waited. When she recognized him, she did not say anything for a moment. Wayne took his hat off. He told her he'd heard about her situation at the filling station. He said it plain, without preamble, the way a man says a thing he has decided to say and sees no reason to dress up. She told him thank you, but it was her problem to handle, and she was working on it. He said he understood that entirely. He said he had a problem of his own she might be able to help him with. She said she doubted it, but he could come in if he wanted coffee. He drank 2 cups. He told her that he had tried to buy land in Montana before and found the whole process difficult. Agents, intermediaries, complications that should not exist. He said he was looking for a property to put money into, not to farm himself, just to have a piece of this country, the size of the sky, the way the ground looked in the evening light. A ranch like this, 31 years of work already in it, river bottom, an established hay operation, was exactly what he meant. He said he would pay the $4,200 to the bank that evening before it closed. He said he would pay an additional $6,000 for a half interest in the property. Her name would stay on the deed, first on it, not second. His would be added below hers. The land would be half hers to work as she had always worked it, and half his to say he had a piece of ground in Montana. Clara Maudsley looked at him across that kitchen table for a long time. The ceiling fan turned slowly overhead and squeaked on every third rotation the way it had for years. She asked him why. He said Pete Calloway had been a friend of his. He said Pete had died 2 years prior in a truck accident outside Flagstaff, Arizona. He said Pete had grown up on a ranch in Wyoming. His family lost it in 1934. Foreclosure. Pete had talked about it for the rest of his life, not bitterly. Just with the regret of a man who watched something important disappear and couldn't find the moment when he might have stopped it. Wayne said he was not a superstitious man. He said he had thought about Pete Calloway on that road coming into Dillon when the boy at the station started talking. He said a man owed certain things to the memory of certain people, and this felt like one of those things. He said it wasn't charity. It was back pay for a debt he couldn't pay to the man who was owed it. Clara did not say anything for a long moment. Then, she said she would need to sleep on it. She would tell him in the morning. He said that was exactly right. He said he would be at the auction at 10 o'clock regardless of her answer, and she should do what felt right to her, and not what felt polite. He put on his hat and drove back toward town. He was at the bank before it closed at 5. Gerald Hooper was still at his desk. Wayne walked in without an appointment, set $4,200 in cash on the desk, and told him the Friday auction was canceled. He told him to write a receipt and then to write a letter on bank letterhead confirming the debt was satisfied in full, signed and dated. Hooper looked at the money. He looked at John Wayne. He wrote the receipt. He wrote the letter. He did not say anything except the necessary things. There was nothing else to say. The debt was $4,200, and the money on the desk was $4,200, and whatever Gerald Hooper may have thought about the situation was his own business to keep. Outside, the evening light lay long and gold across the main street of Dillon, Montana, and the town was quiet the way small towns are in the hour before supper, when the day's work is mostly done. Clara Maudsley read the bank's letter at dawn the next morning. She read it 3 times. Then she put it on the kitchen wall beside the window that faced the road. She called Wayne at the motel and told him she would accept his offer. She said she had one condition, that if he ever sold his half-interest, she or her family would have the first right to buy it back. He said that was entirely reasonable. He said it was already in the papers his lawyer would draw up. The deed was amended that following week. Her name was first on it. His was second. He sent a check for $6,000 drawn on a California bank, and she deposited it and went back to work. She ran that ranch for another 19 years. Think about what those years meant. She had already given 31 years to that ground. She gave 19 more. That is 50 years total, 50 harvests, 50 winters, every fence post and water line and hay bale that 480 acres of Montana River Bottom Ranch requires. She sold cattle in 1958, 1960, and every year through 1976. She refenced the entire river bottom in 1961, 3 miles of it, the summer she turned 63. She bought a new tractor in 1963. She kept 60 head consistently, in a good year 70. Her daughter Ruth came back from Oregon in 1965 with her husband Dale and 2 young boys. Dale had never ranched before. He learned on that ground. By 1970, he was running the cattle operation, and Clara was running the hay. They worked it together for the last 11 years Clara was on the place. Let's count what $10,200, Wayne's $4,200, and his $6,000 actually purchased that August. 19 more years of cattle operation. Call it a modest 60 head at $180 a head in a mid-range year. That is $10,800 a year in cattle revenue. Times 19 years. Before Ruth and Dale ever took over, $205,000 in cattle revenue off one piece of Montana ground. On top of that, Ruth's family had somewhere to come back to. Dale became a rancher. 2 boys grew up knowing what ranch work required. One of those boys, Kevin, still ranches that ground today. His children make the 4th generation on the same stretch of Beaverhead River Valley. One act on an August evening. 4 generations. You cannot put a number on the last part of that math. The deed still hangs in that kitchen. Not the amended one. The original one from when Roy filed for the property in 1926, framed in a simple wood frame that Clara put there herself sometime in the 1940s. Beside it, tacked flat under glass, is Gerald Hooper's letter from Beaverhead County Bank, dated August 14, 1957. Confirming the debt satisfied in full. The afternoon light comes through that west-facing window every day and lies across the deed for a while before it moves on. The cottonwoods outside go yellow in September, the same as they always have. The screen door still slaps twice if you let it go. The morning light comes through the east window of the hay barn low and slow, and finds the top rail of the stall the way Roy Maudsley's light found it in 1926. If you take Route 41 east out of Dillon and drive 22 miles, you will see the cottonwoods before you see the house. The Maudsley name is on the mailbox. The week keeps coming up. Some of you already know someone who did something like this. Quietly, for someone who needed it, without a word about it afterward. Some of you grew up on ground like this, or your people did. This story belongs to you too. John Wayne never mentioned it. not to a reporter. Not in any letter anyone has ever turned up. Not in 30 more years of interviews and public appearances. The only reason any of this is known is that Clara told Ruth, and Ruth told Kevin, and Kevin is on that land today, and he tells it the way ranch families tell the true things, plain, without decoration, in the same tone you'd use to describe the weather. That is most of how it ever got out at all. If you've stayed with this story, subscribe. There are more like it, from the years when men did the right thing quietly and never thought twice about keeping it that way. I find them because they deserve to be found. And unfortunately, they don't make men like John Wayne anymore.